44 minutes after the hour, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. Once upon a time, I agreed with Jamie Weinstein of the Daily Caller on everything. But recently, he's become absolutely anti-Ted Cruz. Jamie's become like the leader of the anti-Ted Cruz movement. And I read his tweets and I say, Jamie, we hardly knew ye. What happened, Jamie Weinstein? What happened?
I don't know, Ted. Hugh, I think we still agree on most of the issues. I just think that, and by the way, during this whole defund movement thing, I think you were the most honest commentator arguing for the strategy because you admitted that it had no chance to succeed. Ted Cruz did the opposite. I think he sold the public a bill of goods, the grassroots a bill of goods that couldn't succeed, and he did so at the same time as he was beating up on people like Tom Coburn and Paul Ryan as people who support Obamacare because they don't support the strategy that he and Mike Lee came up with, didn't consult with anyone about, and all of a sudden decided that everyone in the Republican Party had to support it.
Now,
frankly,
there is a fascinating passage in Charles Croddy. You love Dr. Kayes, right? He's got this new book out, Things That Matter. And in passing, he notes that the period 1976 to 1980, when Carter was in office and the Republicans were in exile, Ronald Reagan remade American politics. And he did it on the basis, if you can't recall, you're too young, but I can recall because I was in college, of the Panama Canal, which he had no more chance of winning than we did of going to Mars at that time. Is there any parallel there, Jamie, that's what Ted Cruz did?
There might be. If I'm not mistaken, I think Buckley and Reagan disagreed over the Panama Canal.
Yes, they did.
Right. So, these are two conservative icons. There's definitely disagreements that occur, and sometimes you have to go out on a stand. But what Ted Cruz did was like the charge of the Light Brigade. There was no chance you could succeed, and it was not the smart move to make, but he went in full steam ahead. And I do feel that he was trying to build up himself by attacking who I think are really good conservatives.
Well, I don't go with attacking any conservatives, but Reagan really brought out the baseball bat, and no one thought that had a prayer of succeeding. And really, a lot of people thought, "What are you doing?" Jesse Helms was on his side, and a few other conservatives, and they were thinking, "Why are we wasting time on the Panama Canal when we ought to be doing A, B, and C?" And the Committee for the Present Defense, or the I think that's what it was called. Committee on the Current Crisis, I can't quite remember. It was Sidney Hook and Norman Podhoretz and Irving Kristol. Committee for the Present Crisis. Committee on the Present Danger, that's what it was. They were all saying, Panama Canal, what are you talking about? But it was a brilliant strategy that Charles now looks back and says, that's what did it. Maybe Cruz is just smarter than the rest of us.
It's very possible, and there's no question that academically, every professor you ever talked to at Harvard Law School says Cruz was one of the smartest, including Alan Dershowitz, who is no conservative. That's very possible. But looking at what I'm looking at right now, Hugh, is we see that what he did was just take away attention from the implementation of Obamacare, which has been a disaster. And as we see now, it seems to me that is, if you want to get rid of Obamacare, it looks like letting it be implemented might be the best way to do it because it's collapsing under its own weight right now.
Well, we're not going to argue that. It's a disaster for them, but let's argue branding. Nobody wants to have anything to do with Obamacare right now. It's like trying to sell typhus, right? And so that you're going door to door and trying to get people to take your typhus-infected food and your typhus block. And, let's have some smallpox. Nobody wants it. Who did the most to brand the Republican Party as anti-Obamacare, Jamie, honestly, in the last month or the last 3 months?
I've heard this argument a lot, Hugh, and that was one of the arguments that people were making, that Ted Cruz is making it clear Republicans are against Obamacare. But honestly, do you think the American public was insufficiently aware after 3 years and many votes in the House that the Republicans were against Obamacare?
Do you think anybody, walking down the street can name anyone in the House? Do you actually think the Republicans, you live inside the bubble. You're in the Beltway where everyone knows there's John Boehner and, look, over here is Kevin McCarthy. You could put Kevin McCarthy posters up all over America and no one would recognize him. Ditto Eric Cantor. They were definitely on the record as being against Obamacare, but selling the issue, it took the shutdown.
I just don't think so. I think that those who knew that Republicans were against Obamacare, I would say the same percentage knew before and after the shutdown. I don't think that you could go down the street and still many people in the general public, you can maybe take the Jimmy Kimmel test. If he took it out to the street of L.A. and put a picture of Ted Cruz out there, I bet you people don't know who Ted Cruz is.
Oh, no, that's interesting because this is where, if you could show me that, I would say, okay, then it didn't work. But in my mind, what happened during those 18 days, the siege, the Alamo of the showdown, and all of our guys got wiped out, right? We lost badly, is that everyone understood we were going to fight for this thing and that the Republicans are indelibly, permanently tattooed as anti-Obamacare. No one blames us for this right now. Have you seen anyone anywhere blame the Republicans for Obamacare?
Well, actually, I do think some Democrats do, I think in a roundabout way, saying that the Republicans stymied the implementation in some way, which is completely ridiculous. But I don't think they would have blamed the Republicans to begin with, because I think, my view is that it was completely clear to anyone who wanted to pay attention and anyone who would have paid attention to Ted Cruz and the shutdown that the Republicans were against Obamacare. I don't think there was a problem with messaging that the Republicans were against Obamacare.
Jamie, that runs against, every reason you come on to do my radio show, or I go back to New York to do Hannity's show, or the reason that anyone buys an ad at any time and repeats it, the reason that there's an in and out break for any NFL game tonight, Monday Night Football, they'll be doing an in and out break. They'll be promoting their schedule ahead. Repetition drives message. Message drives brand.
Who was arguing not to repeat that the GOP and conservatives were against Obamacare? What Ted Cruz did was something altogether different. He basically branded himself and a few people that were with him as the only people who were against Obamacare. And those who even disagreed with his strategy, like Tom Coburn, like Jonah Goldberg at National Review, these people were in effect supporting Obamacare.
That was wrong. People say, I don't think Ted Cruz ever did that. I do think he disagreed with people, but his strategy was the more cowbell strategy. And more cowbell works in American market. If I had a producer, we would go out with more cowbell. Maybe I'll keep you over for a segment here. But don't you believe that more cowbell works?
I think that it would behoove of the Republicans to make clear that they're against Obamacare. I think they have been doing that for 3 years. I don't think Ted Cruz's strategy suddenly made so many more people aware of this. I think he did it to self-aggrandize himself.
Are you really coming out against Christopher Walken? Are you really going that far, Jamie Weinstein? You're so deeply embedded that you will not. You're coming out against more cowbell?
I know that's one of the best skits in Saturday Night Live history, I think.
Well, then I think you've just stick with me, because I think you just ratified Ted Cruz and the more cowbell strategy. I'll be right back with Jamie Weinstein.